That's clearance. Have a great show.
Hello everyone, you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Am I everyone? Have I become everyone?
Oh yeah, I didn't. Do you know?
I love that.
Oh, I
I
suppose
feel
you-
powerful and important.
You are representative of our listeners. Hello, listeners, everyone, and also hello, you, Gabrielle. How are you?
Hello. I'm all right. I've had a really nice week. The weather has been on and off, which has confused me.
Yeah.
But I actually got a job this week, so I feel
congratulations!
Really good.
Are
Thank
you allowed to talk about it?
I'm not sure, so I'm going to say no.
Okay.
But I'm really excited about it. I'm really hopeful. It's in the big smoke, so I'm going to be going off for a bit. But yeah, so I've had a fairly positive week. How about you, Andy?
I'm great. No, am I great? I mean, I am great now. We went camping at the weekend.
In the rain.
It was rainy, it was wet. It was with a 1.5-year-old who he had a great time. I did
In
not.
the rain?
In the rain, yeah, he loved it. My wife and I, did we have a great time? Not so much. There was a lot of crying.
I've just got this image of you stood in the rain, like dramatically, like looking up at the sky, crying, being like, "Why?
It was
Damn you, rain!"
It was a lot more pathetic than that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, where the crying was done at sort of 10:30 at night on my own in the tent. Lessons were learnt.
Mm-hmm.
We will be doing that again, but in very different ways, and maybe not for a few more months / years. So,
Yeah, fine. Well, on that note, hello listeners as well. Speaking of lessons learned, what are we touching on this week, Andy?
Well, thank you for tuning in this week. You are, of course, listening to Absolute Scenes, the podcast that raids the arcs of the entertainment industry, dooms the temples of the arts, and dials the destiny of creativity so that we can fill your ears with infotainment for the next hour or so. I am Andy Barton, and joining me, jonesing for me to finish this Tomb Raider metaphor, it's Gabrielle Shepherd.
Hello. And as always, we come from the Bristol of Vic in association with the building. So thank you again to them. We're going to be talking about training in the arts. And before we begin on that, of course, if you would like to get in touch with us, because we'd love your questions, we'd also love to know if there's anyone you would like us to interview on, hopefully, the next series, please do email that into the Absolute Scenes Podcast at gmail.com or find us on Instagram at the Absolute Scenes Podcast.
So our special guest coming up is the ever wonderful Tom Brennan. He'll be talking about his current life as the head of the theatre making course at Bristol School of Acting. He'll also be talking about his absolute scene, that scene from a play, TV show or feature film that inspires him or gives him goosebumps.
We're lucky to have a double whammy this week.
Yeah.
Same as Jessica, actually. I actually quite am enjoying the double whammies where we've got two.
I like it. I think this is good. I think it's pretty. I think it's where it's a dichotomy between each scene that they're giving.
But also what I'm noticing, I mean, we've only had two doubles so far.
True.
We might do this and release these in a different order, so we might get more. But actually, they both feel like around the same theme. So it's really interesting to like look at the guest and kind of be like, oh, but actually they both center around this thought or this idea.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Get to look into people's brains.
Yeah. Juicy.
But obviously we are talking about training.
Yeah.
It would be amiss if we didn't mention that we've both been through drama school.
Yep.
Very different experiences.
And also, I mean, this is also a podcast that's not just about theatre making. You could be a musician, you could be a dancer, choreographer. So there's obviously lots of other training that isn't about going to a drama school
specifically.
But there is training that would be bespoke for those skill sets as well. Now, I guess there is a discourse and there is always a conversation around people who
do or not to
do or not to do. Yes, and we touched on this. Well, no, we go quite deeply into this. And people is a conversation that I have had for 9 years with people, and I'm very. I don't know. I mean, I think it shifts. I don't really have an opinion on it. Insofar, what I mean is that I think if there is somebody who has either like they're self-taught or when I say self-taught, what I mean is that maybe they've got just a natural affinity towards certain skill sets. They just
A lot of
naturally
people
have.
do, yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. I do not. Well, there's some things that I can do quite well because my body or my brain is just attuned into certain aspects because that's just the way that my life is. I've just been brought up, or my experiences, my lived experiences are, or that my brain just works, or my body has just been built.
Yeah.
But there are other things like accents that I just
interesting.
can't do.
I would have thought you'd be able to do accents.
Nope.
It's practice, right?
It is,
because they
yeah.
often say this about singers. You're either a good singer, like a lot of people believe they can't sing. And I know, some people just hate it. But like I've got friends who have just kept at it. And now they're not Mariah Carey, but they can now hold a tune confidently and feel like they can sing. And I think that's like proof that it's a muscle and it is practice like anything. But I do realise it's harder if you're coming from a place of feeling like you're not good at it.
Now, the other sort of like the other thing about training, or at least going to an accredited school of performance art. So, I mean, let's say we'll take acting because that's where we went to, but it's the same with like a drama school that does maybe a stage combat, or even one that does directing as well. Is the thing with going to what we call an accredited drama school is that those are drama schools that automatically give you access to spotlight.
You are... See, okay. So I have some feelings because I'm sure we all do this, where you go, oh, if I'd have gone here, maybe my life would be drastically different. Yes. And obviously there's no guarantee of that because people go to those schools that I think about and they have an equally hard time that, I might have had. But there is something about drama school that you are kind of buying your way into the industry.
Yes.
And you are also buying yourself some time to fail in a safe, safe-ish, depending on, space where you can, that's kind of what you're doing. But equally, you could spend, so for instance, my degree was 3 years, and you could spend 3 years working on professional shows and getting into spotlight that way. So actually, I don't think there's any right path. I think it's what works for you. And I know some incredible actors who never went to drama school, and yet they've got massive hang-ups about the fact that they didn't go. Yeah. And I'm like, mate, you're way further ahead in your career than I am. And I went to drama school, and it's kind of that thing of you can think something. Yeah, it's that. I often think about, have you read The Midnight Library?
I haven't.
Have I said about this before?
You have said about Midnight Library.
So there's this incredible book called The Midnight Library by... Oh my God, I forgot his name. We'll have to edit that in a minute. By Matt Haig. And it's all about the lives you could have led. And this character, the main character, she is able to go into a library and relive all the lives she could have lived, and actually realizes that they're not as shiny as she thinks they are in her head. Yeah. And I try and remind myself of that, because otherwise I just go, oh, if I'd have gone to RADA, my life would be so much better. But it might not be. No. And I think it's just commit to a journey, change it if you don't like it, and find what works for you. Do your research. Because... If you've got questions, please send them in, because... I love to help.
And we'll, and it's the same, even if you're looking to, as a musician, or a choreographer, or as a dancer, do your research. Look at what is going to maybe work for you. It could be around sort of like location, or money is a huge thing. Huge. And we completely, I did this 10 years ago, and the sum of money was vastly different for what it costs to do an MA 10 years ago than what it costs now. I feel
like weighing up education right now is a huge thing.
It is really big. Because it's not just around how much the course costs, which has changed and it got more expensive. But the fact of, well, if you're going to be doing a full-time course, because my course was almost 10-hour days.
So it was
5 days a week. Yeah,
So
and all
in the
sorts of
final
stuff,
year,
so-
it was 12-hour days,
Yeah.
Monday to Saturday.
And that's no exaggeration.
No,
That's
genuinely.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So it's not as though you could get a second job. Or if you do get a second job.
Good
sorry,
luck. I
a-
wish you
a
luck.
job.
And I had friends who did that while in my year that I lived with, and I could see how tired they were and how I don't know how much it I'd be interested to speak to them now about it, but how much it impacted them. But I think with the full-time training, the ability to be able to just fully jump in is so important. But also the cost of living right now is crazy. So it's a lot to weigh up, basically. And I think, like you say, do your research and find what's going to work for you. Because I was very young when I went. I felt very young. Whereas you were a bit older, so you had a bit more self-awareness, I'm guessing. And
I mean,
you were
for me, it
able
was
to be
like, 21 Jump Street. I was like a cop, and I was just coming off the force, surrounded by like college students, and I was like
rolling your eyes, just like, ugh,
oh my god, yeah,
these people.
it
However, you did meet your wife.
I did.
So she must have not have been too annoying, college student.
No. Well, I mean, I think she was more curious about this weird knuckle dragger who's sort of like.
You keep calling yourself a knuckle dragger, and you're so not.
Yeah, I know.
We're going to take Andy to
self-deprecating.
some dance classes. You'll hear this later, but I'm thrilled. I'm excited to see him in a pair of heels. See how that goes.
I do rock them. they work my calves.
But
really well.
I bet you do amazing.
So stick around. We'll be back in about 3.5 seconds of bed music, where we'll return with Tom. Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back. After that brief interlude, we now wish to also welcome our special guest for today. You may remember him from directing such plays as Drac and Jill, 1972, The Future of Sex and Robin Hood, The Legend of the Forgotten Forest. As well as a director, he's also a playwright, filmmaker, and founding member of the Wardrobe Ensemble theatre company. He's a visiting lecturer at Rose Bruford College, University of Northampton, and Bath Spa University. And my wife reports that he was very nice to her at school and was one of the few that didn't laugh at her during the pink streaks in her hair Avril Lavigne phase. It's Tom Brennan!
Hey! Hello, Tom.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm really well. That's a really nice introduction. Thank you. It also makes me think I should adjust my bio. It feels like it's been a long time since I've taught at the University of Northampton. But
strike that.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I mean, some of those things did come from Amy. I won't tell you which one.
Well, I'm glad that I was nice to her.
Yeah.
Because I also think, you should all have permission to be a bit of a at school. And it's allowed on your podcast?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was just really thinking about what word I should use there. So I think back to being a teenager and being like, oh gosh, was I the best version of myself here or there? So
I don't think any of us were.
And that's allowed.
You're figuring stuff out.
You're figuring stuff out,
fine.
definitely.
I wanted to ask you actually, how would you define yourself? Would you say director, theatre maker? What's your...
I remember being really worried about it in the past, and when I was after graduating and being like, oh, I'm sort of directing, but also I'll act sometimes, and then I'll do sound design for this project, or then I'll be a tour manager, and then by the way, I also do marketing, and
anyone will pay me and I'll do it.
Honestly, and I think there's that I like that about I think I just really like variety, and I get really bored if I do the same thing over and over again, and so I don't really know how to describe myself. I guess I often say director or theatre maker or director, playwright, something. But that's really because of you're always tailoring your CV according to the job you're looking for. And but I feel very lucky that I've done a variety of different jobs and continue to do that. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's all right.
So we have, we tend to have a sort of an icebreaker question.
Oh, I already asked a question.
Yeah, but that's okay. No, that's all right. This is okay. This is fluid. This is a fluid sort of interview process. But it's also sort of a bit of a fun one before we get to the nitty gritty serious stuff.
This is the only surprise question.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but you don't
Fantastic.
know about. So we. And this is sort of wonderfully suggested by one of our listeners. So, Tom, you're famously a founding member of the Wardrobe Ensemble. So your icebreaker question is this. Would you rather assemble a wardrobe with only nails and no hammer, or disassemble a fully built wardrobe with only your fingernails?
Well, gosh, I feel like the disassembling would be more fun because you don't have to be so careful. But also fingernail, it would take a long time.
Do you have strong fingernails?
No, I think it would be painful. It would be hard work. But I'm going to go with the destruction of the wardrobe rather than the construction.
Oh,
Destruction is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about power tools earlier, and I love destruction.
Yeah.
From living on the boat, I've had
Sledgehammers
so
and
much
things.
fun, just like smashing stuff.
Fantastic.
Up. It's been great. So
Fantastic.
I'd be with you, I think.
Yeah.
on
that's
that.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great answer. I mean, there's no
Great.
right or wrong answer.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
it's a great answer.
Maybe
as
there
well.
is. Yeah. Maybe it really says
Maybe
something
actually-
like only psychos say destruction.
Yeah.
We'll find that out later.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
speak to a psychologist.
Send your answers into.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
And then we can send diagnoses out to everyone.
That sounds good.
Diagnoses.
Diagnose.
Thank you, Tom.
No, I don't think so.
So actually, that kind of shows how educated you are. So maybe we should talk about some training now.
Yeah, why not? Definitely.
He knows all the big words.
That's not. Don't go around quoting diagnose. I don't think that's going to be. A thing.
So obviously, you've done quite a lot of different forms of training. Would you say that's fair? Fair to say? 'Cause
I don't know. Have I? Yeah. Well,
I mean,
did.
some
go on.
professional, like some at drama school and stuff, but I was thinking about, like, obviously we know each other from Bristol Vic Young Company.
Yeah.
So you've kind of, and you might have done training before that as a child. So you kind of have come up through the Young Company into the first year of Made in Bristol, where you made the Wardrobe Ensemble. And then am I right in thinking you went straight to Rose Bruford?
Yeah, so we made the company and then I went to Rose Bruford. So we did our first show, and then while that show was touring, I was in my first year of drama school at Rose Bruford. Yeah. And so was trying to juggle being at drama school and running the company, but that's always been the way for all of us, is like juggling other bits of life alongside the company. So but really just those two. Yeah. Like, it's amazing when you meet people in other careers, but also in art practices. I did a residency with Lost Dog last summer, and I would really recommend it to anyone. It was an amazing sort of week residential thing.
And what was that? Was that theatre or film?
It was dance theatre.
Yes.
Oh, right.
And
Okay.
for me, I was like throwing myself into this environment. And I love moving and I love dancing, but I would definitely not. And actually, I love choreographing movement for the stage, but I'm also, no dance background really, no dance training. And it was just such an amazing experience to be like an amateur again, or be someone who's like loving it but was also surrounded by there were loads of like professional high-end dancers who were working at a really high level with like loads of international companies, and then there was me like kind of
like, hiya!
Whoa, like trying to get stuck in. But actually it was amazing. But the guy Ben Duke, who runs Lost Dog, was talking about how he did an English literature degree, and then he did drama school, and then halfway through drama school he was like, oh, actually dance is where it's at. So then did a dance degree. So he basically did 9 years of training before he made work as a sort of independent artist, and it shows. Like, I think there's a level by which like his thinking and the depth of his thinking and how he chooses to sort of participate in creativity is like amazing, because there's someone who's really been like deeply thinking about different disciplines and what each discipline is good for. And so the way he'll talk about what dance is good for versus what text and theatre is good for, and then has this sort of like literary brain, is like,
that's so interesting,
so enviable,
so
amazing.
Layered.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah,
so
but
cool.
yours was your drama school degree was American
Yeah,
theatre,
American
right?
theatre,
it felt...
I think, to be honest,
why?
I think I just wanted to go to America. Like, I think...
did you get to go to America?
So they give you like a term abroad, and I went to live in Kentucky for a term, and it was amazing. But I was very lost, I think, at that period of time in my life. And so I think I didn't apply to any other drama schools, randomly found this one, kind of applied, and then really liked their course directors, and got a really good feeling about the way that they would be talking about I guess, intellectual academic ideas that I was, you go to like different universities and they'll go, okay, unpick a play. But the way that they were doing it at Rose Bruford in this course was like, felt
right.
emotional. It felt spicy. It didn't feel detached or academic. And that was really exciting for me. And then, I wanted to go to America, got to go to America. What a laugh.
Yeah, great. Amazing.
Yeah.
So you did that, and then you've kind of been running the Wardrobe Ensemble, and now you've moved on to running a course yourself. So I guess, like, why are you so obsessed with education?
That's great.
What's wrong with you?
Well,
or what's right? Like,
well, maybe I'm not. I'm really interested in education, and I'm really interested in particularly higher education, because I think there's enough space in a degree, and also other environments. Like I've taught a lot in kind of like more residency or kind of workshop situations. But there's a way that you can have. It feels like I'm always engaged by teaching higher education because it feels like we both have an ability to change through the conversation.
Great.
And that's always really exciting to me. If I feel like I'm being stimulated kind of intellectually or spiritually or emotionally by a student and we're bouncing off each other and we can feel like, I don't know, it feels to me like there's space in those environments for actually everyone to change, but also they're environments in which you don't have to directly address the stuff that actually, if you get together with professional creatives and kind of have a nice long chat, chances are you're going to be like complaining about money or the state of the industry.
We'll come to that later.
Right, yeah. But like, what's great about education is that you can talk about the thing that really counts.
Yes.
Or really matters artistically, and therefore it reminds you of that. And I think I'm definitely a better director because, or a better theatre maker because I'm often teaching. And I think in other countries they have much more developed relationships between professional practice and teaching. So like actually in America, you know, some of the greatest theatre makers also will teach a module at a drama school or whatever because they know it's good for them and it's a really good way to reinvigorate their own practice. So I think it's a great way to keep yourself alive and connected to what's important.
So is your timetable in over 12 months?
Yeah.
Is it pretty much 50-50 of between lecturing, teaching and creativity, sort of making plays or theatre making or even film directing? I know you do as well.
Yeah.
Or do you think that percentage is heavily weighted towards?
I think probably is about 50-50, but it
nice,
changes
though.
all the time. Yeah. And
that's
I think
freelance though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Of course,
Exactly. But I think that's a good, I'm happy with that. That feels quite nice to me. Because I've got friends who work in a more commercial theatre space, and to be like relentlessly in those jobs would feel sort of hard, I think, for me.
Yeah,
I also think there's something in this country, and I don't know if you agree with this, you two, but there's some people that really look down on teaching within the arts. I think it comes from that expression, if you can't do teach, which I think is so like full of shame and like completely ridiculous.
Totally.
So I wonder if like, do you feel that sometimes? Like, do you feel like people, or do you feel like because you've got like, obviously the Wardrobe Ensemble is very successful. Do you feel like you're like, well, it is. Like, I think it is.
Well,
do you not feel that way?
It would be nice if we could
make some more
money. I mean, it's like,
I think that's relatable for everyone right now, though. So
I mean, I think a lot about like, guys go, oh, what's the dream? Like, what am I trying to like push towards? But and maybe it would be that I don't know. I mean, I think you're right. I think teaching gets a lot of like flack
for no reason.
But also, we obviously have a real like financial class problem in this industry and also loads of other industries, which is like, who gets the privilege to also like work on your play that you're going to do? You know, it's like if you're coming up, you'd be lucky to do like one show with a nice run a year, like as a director I'm talking, you know, coming up. So if you're in that position, it's like, only the most privileged people would be able to go like, oh yeah, I'm going to spend my whole year like figuring out my vision or whatever. There's a lot to say about that, but I've applied to some things recently and squeezed in my interview between classes, and that's hard actually, because you can tell from the tone of the interview that some people have been preparing for that all day.
Yeah, of course.
And then you're in an environment being like, okay, I, got into the right Wi-Fi in the drama school, and they're like, here I am, and sorry, it's not an ideal situation. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
and that's kind of like hard to stomach, but you also have to be like, the game is rigged and cool, and like be kind to yourself. I think the main thing that I'm trying to be with myself and with other people is just being like, if you can figure it out and make a play and get on with and stay on it, then that's just a miracle, and like good for you. It's amazing in whatever way, whatever that means, but actually in America, my time there sort of taught me about, that I was meeting people, that say, oh, I'm an actor, but they'd been waitering for 10 years, but would still go to their classes and still do all that stuff, and it wouldn't have seemed to, I'm sure it did, but it didn't seem to affect the sense of integrity, which is like, I'm an artist and I'm a creative and this is what I'm doing now, because I need to. Whereas I felt definite like shame of being like, oh, I'm just teaching, or like diminish that, or like, oh, I'm just doing this, as opposed to,
I'm working on my craft.
And living my life and paying my rent and like making it work, and like that's impressive. So I don't know. I feel like we've definitely got a thing in this country about like sort of, are you really, are you really an artist?
How dare you be an artist?
I think it's about how you feel about it. Because some people will absolutely hate teaching and not want to teach, and that's fine. But I don't think it obviously also brings a lot of people a lot of joy. I think,
but whatever you're doing to like sustain yourself, for me it's teaching, but it's like, I know that for other people it's sort of anything. It's like
Great.
You sort of did touch upon it a little bit, but as an arts educator, what are the biggest challenges facing you right now, or even your students?
Because also your course is only a year old, right?
So our first year group are halfway through their training, which is it's a 2-year accelerated degree through Bristol School of Acting. I think the thing that's changed since I was at drama school is that it is like just the cost of living and the support you get as a student. So it felt fair. It felt like it was much more equal in the experience that we all had when I was at drama school. By which I mean we were all kind of packed into our rubbish student halls, but it was all the same, and then we all rock up and we could sort of all afford our chips for lunch or whatever it was. Here in Bristol, accommodation is so expensive. It's really split for me between those who can afford to like live in student flat with people and those who are at home and having long commutes to get in and things like that. So I just think like there's all these things that are about life and about economics that get in the way of like the training and how precious that is. That feel quite hard to, I mean, that's a kind of weird way of saying it, but it's like, just seems to me that the things any problem that a student has had that has really impacted their education or everyone else's experience of that education has predominantly been to do with things that are nothing to do
with education
or their quality as an artist, and are about like other forces in the world kind of screwing them over. And that's kind of heartbreaking. Because
are they full time, your students? So because I think we found when I was at drama school, we found this is like you could see the difference between students who had to have a job around full time, versus which if you're in a uni course and you're only got like 8 contact hours a week, that's fine. But when you're in like would you say it's conservatoire training? Like it's just feels a little bit exhausting and impossible, right?
Yeah, totally. And again, it's like the game is rigged. So it's like who gets to have enough rest, which means they always make a good impression, which means they always, versus who's the person who's working every weekend and living in a sort
just
of
about knows their
really
lines and
wild home environment or whatever. So it's like it's really it's pretty sad to engage with, but also when you witness the changes that people have experienced and the way that they'll, have a new language to articulate themselves, for example, is just amazing. So cool.
And how many students do you have in your course?
So we have 12.
12.
Great. That's a really good number.
Oh, it's
Like,
great.
the
It's the
perfect
best.
number.
I don't want more. I don't want any more.
No.
But we obviously should have more.
Yeah.
But they're great.
And I realised, I think it would be criminal for us to not allow you to at least plug the name of the course.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Whilst you're
please.
on. I think you should, because we're going to get emails and Instagram
right,
messages
yeah.
if you feel it or not. So you're more than
So
welcome.
it was called theatre making, but what we realised, and this is a bit weird, is that we realised that that's actually a term from back in the day. Like that's a term I use.
Yeah, I call
But
myself a theatre
right,
maker.
but that actually, because of COVID in part, but also because of a number of other things, the phrase theatre making isn't used. So we talked to 16 to 18-year-olds about the course, and they would think that it was making theatres and making sets.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah,
Oh.
right.
They just didn't. That
So, like,
culture is not-
design.
so
Yeah.
design. So I went into a school to give a workshop to promote the course, and
They were like,
and
"Where's the
she
paint?
just thought,
Where's the
yeah,
wood?"
she just thought I was going to do a
It
costume.
probably
a
didn't help
costume
that
one.
you were doing a workshop as
Well,
well.
also,
so probably-
it's even more
Yeah.
problematic because the company's name is the Wardrobe Ensemble. so they thought we were making costumes.
They were like, could you take this apart with your
It
nails,
was
please?
exactly. It was totally strange. So we're changing the name to Acting and Device Theatre, which is a
Okay.
more appropriate
Yeah.
name for the moment. But
It might change again.
it's funny, you develop obviously like certain associations with different words, and devised theatre is something that I sort of personally struggle with, whereas theatre making feels more correct to me.
Yeah,
but
that's how I feel as well.
yeah,
And it's a BA, isn't it?
it's a BA, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you've obviously changing it to acting and sorry, what did you say? Devising.
Devised theatre,
Acting
yeah.
and devised theatre. There we go. So do you cover actor training as
Yes,
well?
big time. I mean,
Okay,
I
great.
would say it's essentially a third is performance,
Great.
and then what's kind of cool about it is then a third is devised theatre, but also writing, directing, and
Great.
you develop there's a bit of training in lighting and sound.
So how to run a company.
Yeah,
and-
but also all these ways that for me, I've had a career that's based on the idea that yes, I know how to run QLab, and yes, I can run your sound design, and yes, I'll do a bit of video projection over here, and yes, I'll also, make some flyers for you, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't think that I think this sort of, again, it's a sort of luxury to live in this sort of purist. Most actors I know
yeah.
are operating on a couple of different registers.
Yes.
Unless you're in like the 2%.
Yeah,
right at
exactly.
the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's all of that really, but also
Great.
something I'm really proud of in it is that it's got a strong intellectual line, which you do write essays, and it's really interesting to watch students who are like, I'm not that kind of person, slowly figure out that they
How to do that.
how to do that, and also that they are interested in the ideas of the world, and they eventually, for me, it's always about, it's like, okay, we can train you how to like move in a certain Lecoq-based way, for example, but are you going to have anything to say when you've finished that process?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that training also engages with the world and the ideas of art history or politics or whatever.
Great.
I mean, and that actor-centric, at least my training, there's a lot around actor-centric research as well.
Right, interesting.
And those curiosities were fed not only by going out and enjoying nature and that sort of thing, but also sending myself into a library, or be it a physical one or an electronic one, and being curious and interested about history, about socioeconomics, about the politics of the times, of the play, of the film, whatever I might be doing. And that just sends me down a rabbit hole of like, oh my God, I'm just devouring it. And then wanting to talk about it, write about it, and then putting that onto my notes of my scripts. And then that then, for me anyway, informs my objectives. It informs my movement. It informs those further curiosities.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, no, I definitely get that. Yeah. What's motivating you creatively at the moment?
Well, we just did our first end of year show,
which was great.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry, whenever I bump into Tom, I'm just like next to people being like, it was really good. It was
so
just
nice.
really fun.
Oh,
like
thanks.
it just felt very
Thank you.
of them as
Yeah,
well, which I really,
yeah,
which
which is
obviously
cool.
it would do, but
Yeah.
I think you managed to like craft them all together really well. So
Oh,
yeah,
thank
I
you
think
so
they smashed
much.
it. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, yeah, so we did this show called Elsinore, which was based on Hamlet. It was like a sort of
A
retelling remix thing where we sort of expanded on the stories of Hamlet a little bit and
Didn't focus on Hamlet
no,
either, which
so it was
I
more
really
of a kind of
enjoyed.
ensemble piece, which was nice. But I've been thinking a lot about adaptation and how to do that in a way that feels true to me or to the Wardrobe Ensemble. You know, we're aware that producing an original piece of devised work is actually quite challenging, and we're being told constantly by theatres, oh, bring us a title, if you can bring us a title. And I remember that feeling so cynical and sad, like, oh, if it's a title, you know, so you don't trust that we can make something engaging. But also I'm aware that it's a reality, which is like, what can I as a punter trust when I go to the theatre?
It feels true of right now as well. It's like, bring us a name or bring us, something that people will go, oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, I'll come watch that.
So there's a cynical part of my brain, which is a producing brain, which is like, it's not cynical, which is like, oh man, it would be really good to try and make something with a name that everyone goes, yeah, cool, I can trust that, right? So there's that. But actually a deeper level, what was really exciting about Elsinore and is really exciting about other things that feel like that feels very true to the spirit of the Wardrobe Ensemble for me, which is about baggage, which is, I love working with audiences' baggage. So Elsinore was fantastic because lots of people have baggage with Shakespeare and Hamlet that you get to directly play with. So it's like saying, it's like saying, hey, we've got all this shared history when people walk into a room, and then I can play with that, or I can subvert that, and that's just an absolute thrill. I mean, that's like so fun to play with.
And I think you'll actively get, like, for me, that's the kind of thing that my favorite thing is to retell old stories and do exactly that and like change it. And I think you'll get those audiences that are like, yeah, I like feel like I should like Shakespeare, and but actually you being like Hamlet but screwed up a bit. Yeah. People would be like, oh, okay.
Because I guess the impetus for that show was like, okay, I want to capture the spirit of Hamlet, but but nothing but the spirit. Just be like, okay, what does it feel like it's about to me? And then be like, okay, free reign to really do anything. And we can go over here, we can go over here, we can talk about this. Claudius can get that would be great. Like,
put on an airplane.
That's fine. Like, it's all allowed, you know. And that was very invigorating to essentially be like, oh, isn't it fun to work with people's baggage? Which I think is actually something that I've enjoyed doing forever. It's like Drac and Jill is working on your understanding of Dracula and enjoying, like, playing with that or subverting that. Or, 1972, The Future of Sex was like, oh, let's do, the 70s, and we'll play with your expectations of what that feels like, or actually, so all the things you said, Robin Hood as well. It's like, okay, if everyone knows Robin Hood and they're going to go and see Robin Hood, how can we play with everyone's expectations of that and deliver on those expectations, but in an interesting way? Exactly. And a friend of mine talked about, revivals, but also doing any kind of old stories, like holding these old stories up to the light in this contemporary moment and like seeing what they look like in the light of the moment, and I like that idea. As someone who in the past was only interested in the idea of original story and being like, we need new stories for the moment. Yeah. It's quite nice to find myself a little bit older in a moment and be like, oh no, it is really exciting to look at that text again from a slightly different angle, but also know I've got permission to sort of really mess with it if I feel like that would help bring it to the light,
And also I feel like for me, the more I'm like, well, no story is original. Yeah. The more I'm like, well, then I'm just retelling some story, even if I've not read it. So I've just kind of tried to let go of that, like, oh, it's a new story, because actually someone will be like, oh, I saw a show like that last week or 10 years ago. And I'll just be like, cool. Well, I still want to make it, and it still feels important, so I'm going to do it.
Is there a story out there that you're curious about, but you think that it's just not possible to ever be done, but it's just but you're just sort of like,
Gosh, that's interesting.
I'm a bit curious about that.
I've got ones that I feel like I could mess with or do something to. But again, you sort of have to know what the core of the story is and why you're like tackling it. And therefore, if you know why you're doing it, then you should be able to do it. As in, I feel like everyone's got the permission to do whatever they want, really. Yeah. But there's I don't know. Yeah, not really. But something that made me think of is it's like maybe we have a slightly basic version of what that is, in the way that it's like the cliche being like, oh, it's like Hamlet set on the moon or whatever.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's like that we have to retain all the ingredients and be loyal to them, but then also the context is different. But you're like, yeah, I don't know. I saw Player Kings the other night.
Oh, me too.
Which I just thought was great. I was really interested in what they were doing. Like, it's texturally, atmospherically very specific and surprising. And it was kind of mad to sit in the Hippodrome, this massive theatre, and be like, oh, there's all these people that have signed up to see this. And it's weird.
And like, also it's two. It's Henry the Fourth and Fifth.
It's Henry the Fourth, Part 1 and 2.
That's the one.
I think.
Oh dear.
Which I don't know.
That's how well I know my Shakespeare.
I don't know anything about those plays.
No, me neither.
And I was so surprised to be like, this is so weird.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'd heard everyone go on about it's Ian McKellen's Falstaff. It's Ian McKellen's Falstaff. Yeah. And then obviously Ian McKellen very sadly fell off the stage. So it wasn't Ian McKellen. But I thought the understudy did such a good job. And I spoke to him afterwards and he was saying like, that was only the 5th time I've done this. And I was just like,
that's
God.
wild.
And also to try and be like, I'm going to have to make this mine. Like, I can't pretend to be Ian McKellen. And I thought he did such a good job.
Yeah.
And
great.
then also to be telling the 2 parts together.
It's a mega night.
And like, it's so, like, I really enjoyed it. And the imagery that Robert Icke has used and like, just it's like,
cool.
nom nom nom, tasty.
Yum yum. Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was great.
I'm gonna circle back a little bit onto sort of like training again, only because this is a conversation that I have a lot with my peers, and not just sort of like drama school peers, but just every sort of acting.
Anyone in the street you can get hold of.
Anyone who'll talk to me, or if it's anyone who talks to me at reception. So accredited training, necessary or not necessary in the arts.
What does that mean?
So basically going to, as a quote unquote drama school or not needing to go to drama school to make it in the arts. Do you think that's it's a necessary thing?
I don't think it's necessary. And I say that as someone who runs.
Yeah, I realised as I wrote that question.
No, it's provocative, but I guess it's like I've worked with really amazing actors who have got a whole thing in their head about the fact that they never went to drama school.
Yeah, I've got friends.
And I want to grab them by the shoulders and be like, you're very good. And you have an amazing work ethic. And I think it's like whatever gets you there. And I think, I believe that there are objective things that are better. What I mean by that is we've been thinking a lot about it in relation to the training that we've been running, which is, if you're going to train to be a brain surgeon or let's say a bricklayer, it's like if you can't lay bricks and you can't do surgery on brains, by the time you finish that training, you're not that thing. You haven't achieved that thing.
Yeah.
And so what are the objective components of what we're trying to teach and say when you graduate from that program, you now are a professional in this environment? Because I've definitely taught on some programs and some university programs that will be in a certain drama related field, and you go, I'm so pleased that you've improved in these number of ways, but I don't think you're at a professional level. And we're not very good at understanding what that means in an environment which is like, hey, just going through my own creative journey, you know what I mean? And it's like, but if I can't hear you from the back of the stage, are you an actor? Like, are you a professional actor?
Yeah, you need that really like skill set foundation of things. But also, I think you can do it with, like you say, without drama school, because you could go and see a voice coach. You could go and obviously the thing is with drama school is you're getting it funded. You can get student loan potentially. So you're much more privately funding it if you go. But I've got incredible friends that have as opposed. I guess it's like any job. Like I don't know if you wanted to be an engineer or something. I'm saying this because my brother's an engineer, but like you could become an apprentice and literally do it on the job. Like I've got friends who have just started working, and in those 3 years, they've come on the same amount as drama school, and that was just the right journey for them.
I guess the reason I asked that question as well is, then not to put anyone on the spot, but if anything, to reinforce that message, especially for anyone listening as well, because anyone who's sort of like at the genesis of their career, maybe someone's listening who's at drama school at the moment, or someone who's thinking about going to, keep saying drama school, but anyone who's thinking about going into the arts that may or may not require training, or is at least looking at potential options and training options for the future, that is one avenue and one path, but it's not the only path.
And I think it's finding the one that's right for you. Right?
I think that's right. But also what I think training does is providing an environment to be like, you are in a work in progress. You are a work in progress, and you are honestly, the label of training is very useful, right? It's like I'm very suspicious of anyone who's like, I'm finished and I know exactly what I am and what I'm doing.
I did that and I was not finished.
Right,
I graduated, I was like, I'm ready now. And the industry went, no, you're not.
No, you're not. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But the number of things that I was taught at drama school that at the time I was like, oh, this is rubbish, not for me, thanks very much. And then 10 years later, you find yourself coming back to it.
Yeah, the penny drop moment.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, I think there being an openness to the number of ways that you can engage with that process, then like, that's good. I mean, it's like me doing this dance residency last summer. I was like, I need to open myself up, and it was so good to like learn again and to be a pupil again, and to like reinvigorate the way I was working. And I want to do that every year. I want to do something where I'm the amateur in the room every year, and I want to try and like open myself up in that way, because it's so good for you.
I feel that way as well. I did a week of Meisner at Bristol Theatre School last year, and it was like,
I bet that was wild.
Oh my God, it was so good. And it just made me be like, every year I want to go and do a week of training. Like, I think this year I want to do like a Shakespeare week, which would be sick. But I had a thought and it's gone.
we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? Because I was saying about the and I guess just jump in my own things, that there's a particular movement class that I've found that I want to do as well, because I've got to a point in my creative learning process where I feel that there's now gaps. I mean, there's always gaps, but where I'm now ready to now I've identified some gaps that have really fed some curiosities, and I'm like, this is, and I found also the particular workshops that are going to be able to sort of like feed those curiosities and gaps as well.
Definitely. But isn't it funny? So it's like so many of my students go, well, that's not my kind of, like, they'll determine themselves, like they know who they are. And
I'm like, you're 18.
Yeah, well,
you
totally.
Don't know who you are.
But also,
maybe they do.
I'm so much more ambiguous about like trying to, I just feel like I don't know anything, and I'm just going to sort of open myself up to whatever now. But when you're that age, when you're 18, 19, you're like, this is the kind of work I make, and this is my process, and this is who I am. And you're like, you idiot.
You have so far to go.
I know. And I just want to, some of my students who just want to be like, you don't know anything.
And
that's great.
You couldn't tell me
so
that.
nice.
You couldn't tell me that when I was that age.
I'm a 42-year-old knuckle-dragging ex-cop, and trust me, I know full well that I need to go to some movement classes.
That's so cool.
To go and really identify aspects and reconnect with aspects of my body.
You should come to a dance class with me.
Yeah, 100%.
Come on, get your heels on.
But Andy, that was, because you were training, how old were you when you went to drama school?
32. So
that must have been amazing for you to have that kind of self-awareness and be surrounded by children.
I had an incredible experience. Yeah. We had very different experiences. I was doing an MA and Gabrielle was doing a BA, but I had an amazing experience. Yeah.
Amazing. Magic.
I remembered my question. So I was going to say also about training and drama school. The one positive, because I think you were kind of touching on this, is whereas if you don't go to drama school, you're kind of learning on the job. At drama school, you have the permission to fail.
Yes.
So I would say if anyone's interested in going to drama school, that is something, as you are given that space. And the best way you can learn is to fail, honestly. Like, it's terrifying, but that is definitely a positive.
And I also think that what we have a collective responsibility to do is to create more environments that aren't necessarily in training for people to fail, so that we're all just kind of allowed to do that again and again. And I think I have to remind myself at this point in my career that it's like, it's also, the thing is also allowed to be bad.
Yes.
In a way that other economic environments of the past, I guess,
we could have done that more.
That was part of the risk of the theatre making process. And now, obviously, there's just too many people and there's too little resource. But you need to also, for some sort of philosophical longevity, is be like, I'm going to hold myself to a high standard and I'm going to try and make the best thing I possibly can. But like, if I was in any other job, it is also allowed to fail sometimes. And the wall
and you won't never work again.
Exactly. The wall is able to fall down and it'd be like, well, that's just what happens sometimes. And next time it won't and whatever.
Yeah.
But if we create the environment of fear is so unhelpful, you know.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time not making work because I've been too scared, and I'm just really done with that now. I'm coming back round to it. And is it Lynn Gardner that won't go and see a company's first show? She will, but she won't review it.
Right.
Because she wants that company to be able to fail. And I think that's, as a company, you're like, no, Lynn, please give us a review. But on the other hand, I'm also totally. That is brilliant, because you should be able to fail. So important.
So I think we're sort of getting to a bit now where I think it's time
that
we find out what your absolute scene is. So obviously, dear listeners, you've probably got to a point now where you know full well what's coming. But of course, this is where we ask our special guests to give their absolute scene. That scene from a film, from a TV show or a play. It could even be from a chapter from a book or even a song or a stanza from a poem. But it's that bit of creativity, that thing that either got them into this mess in the first place or
brings them comfort in moments of darkness.
That gives them the chills down the spine every time they see it or hear it or watch it or read it. So Tom, if you so kindly tell us what your absolute scene is.
I've got two, and again, these are just from the day. I bet everyone says this all the time, is like, oh, you know, today I'm going to say that, right? So these are my two for the day.
That's absolutely fine. Okay. It's allowed to change as well.
It's allowed
I think,
to change.
Like, it doesn't have to
I'm
be
not
like...
determined by this for the rest of my life. Okay, fine. So the first is the last scene of Y Tu Mama Tambien, which is a Mexican film by Alfonso Cuarón, and it's got Diego Luna and Gael Garcia Bernal in it, and it's this like weird, sexy, very sexy, funny, dirty, scrappy road movie where they're these two teenage boys in Mexico City, and then they're going on a trip to this beach with this older woman who they both fancy, and it's great if anyone hasn't seen it. And it's I haven't seen it. So I watched it again recently and I was like, oh, this would just never be made today because it's just naughty and sexy and funny and charming, but it's also kind of there's a sort of honesty around a certain type of teenage boy in it, which is like kind of, you just wouldn't.
It's not PC.
It's not very PC.
Okay.
But it's got such a great vibe, and it's also got this amazing thing where occasionally the sound will cut out and this narrator will just talk about what's going on, and also the context that surrounds the story. So it'll be like, on this road 50 years ago this thing happened. So there's got this amazing form where they can kind of jump through time because this narrator will just suddenly start talking. You go like, who's this narrator? How does this relate to anything? Anyway, at the end of the film, you've had this really fun old romp with these three people, and then it jumps forward a few years and they're older and they've maybe graduated university and they meet in this cafe, and they just bump into each other in the street and they decide to go for coffee, and the narrator says this is the last time that they'll ever meet. And so the whole thing is sort of filled with this kind of tension, which is like, are they going to resolve the thing between them or ever be close again? And they never, and it's really tragic, but it's also really beautiful in the way it sort of speaks to youth and the energy that they had when they were young and stuff like that. And it's I don't want to spoil anything because there's like obviously things that make that meeting complicated, but it's great because you can do anything in a story and to just jump ahead in time.
How old are they in the final scene?
They're probably still in their early 20s, so they're like 21 or something. It's not a big jump, but it's enough of a jump to be like they're at a different point in their life.
Yeah,
and
perspective.
And it's just very moving. And anything for me that feels like stories exist in a context in a psychological context, but also sort of historical one, it makes me really excited. And that film is really good at that. It's really good about saying, hey, here's like a raunchy sex comedy, but here's also like Mexico's history that's happening simultaneously. And
great.
it's so cool. And
So it's like
exciting.
political and fun and all of those things.
And for me, like in my own work, whenever it feels like that's happening, I feel like I'm cooking on gas. It's like whenever it feels like, oh, I can do anything, or I can have loads of fun, but there's a backdrop around that. It's like with Drac and Jill, we were really aware of going, okay, let's have as much fun as possible, but the target of the joke needs to be in the right place. And the that's like a stupid show in the best way, but it's like the target has to be in the right place, and we have to believe in the politics of the way that the stories are negotiated, and so and also that there will be acts in it which are secretly subversive for us, that feel like they are aware of their own context, so context and stories is the
layers
thing, man.
And I think
As
also
well.
when you've got someone like it's Alfonso
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
And
yeah.
especially when you've got filmmakers like that who are telling stories that obviously they're not sort of biographical, but when they are telling stories about their heritage and about their countries and about where they are from, you can feel it's told with love and sensitivity, but also pride as well.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
And that goes into their storytelling and into their filmmaking or plays or
but and what's so exciting about that and he'd made quite a few films before that were quite sort of prestige and beautifully put together, and then he said, well, when they started to make this film, they had to forget everything they knew and go back to this and it feels very documentarian the way that they film it. But there's this really strong sense of like background and foreground, like stuff is happening in the background and stuff is happening in the foreground, which is just amazing. It's amazing.
I love
but
that.
and told with such love and affection, but is also formally playful with this kind of narration thing going on. I mean, that's so exciting, isn't it? And I feel like maybe in this country we can get kind of trapped in a certain kind of like representational political story in a kind of social realist vein, which is fantastic. But like we can also tell political stories about any member of British society, but in a like formally playful way. It doesn't have to be trapped by a certain kind of naturalistic style, That's exciting to me too.
Is the identity of the narrator ever revealed?
No.
Interesting. I love that. And what's your second one?
My second one is, and it's completely different in a way, is from the movie Titane by Julia Ducournau, who's a French filmmaker. And this is her second film, and it's really intense. So if you like sort of extreme extreme body horror and that kind of like visceral thing, is for a certain, which I've gone on a real journey with, because when I was a kid I found horror movies too intense, and I realized that that's a certain, because of my own sort of like emotional sensitivity, which I think is maybe one of the reasons why I'm like good at my job and bad at my job, which is like I'm really like sensitive to other people and like this kind of thing, but it's also like I react very strongly to things. So I've gone on a real journey being like absolutely terrified of horror films, and then being like drawn to them because they also make me feel something and make me have a bodily reaction, which is amazing to me that art can do that. And so her films really achieve that, but also marry them with really interesting ideas. And there's a scene fairly near the end where the character that you've been following, who's this sort of like psychopath woman who earlier on in the film has sex with a car, and it's like all very weird, and then it's like on the run because she's like killed someone, and she sort of finds herself in this like a fire brigade.
Okay.
And she's there, and she's made herself look like a boy, and then there's this mad scene where she's got this very male physicality, and she's standing on top of this fire engine at a party, and there's all these men dancing, and she manages to shift her physicality slowly from a very masculine dance to a very sexual feminine dance, and it's like breathtaking because it's such an odd play with gender and the body. And I think it's so masterfully done. And the way that the men are like looking at her and don't know how to react to her. And she's kind of claiming power, but also like punishing herself. But also, it's really interesting. And it hits you in a completely experiential, visceral way, like her films do, which just kind of operate on this incredibly bombastic thing, but also as a sort of really clever play with like femininity and masculinity and male and female space. It's just like so exciting.
I feel like I really just want to watch that scene, but I hate horror so
Oh
much.
yeah.
I just don't get on with it. But
Yeah.
I also love that duality of playing with gender. So I feel like maybe I could just find the scene on YouTube or something and watch it.
You probably could. Yeah.
When was this film made?
A couple of years ago. It was. It won the
fairly
Palme
recent.
d'Or a few years ago,
Oh, nice.
and it's kind of. I think it's great. I brought my partner and a friend of ours, and they both just were like, "Why did you bring this up?" But I thought it was so moving. It was so moving because it sort of spoke to being. I don't know. I've made me think a lot about being a human being and like what it was to kind of love and to connect with someone and be a human being. I thought it was really amazing.
I think in both of those that you've just given us, it seems to just be the like duality of different things at once. That seems to
So
be
good. Yeah.
That seems to be your thing.
Yeah. Art is so
Nice.
cool when it can make you acknowledge that two things can be true at the same time. I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Like, and we live in a world that really wants one thing to be true.
Yes. And
And-
be in boxes.
Yes. And I love things that feel like they can hold that. And Tony Kushner talked about theatre being a really good form for that, actually, because you're sort of aware of its own artificiality, that it's like on stage, the kitchen sink is a kitchen sink, but it also is like representational of a kitchen. Like it's not a kitchen sink and it is a kitchen sink. Sort of thing. And and I love that theatre is like the worst art form because it's totally ineffective. Like I sit in the theatre and I'm like really aware that I'm sat in a theatre with these strangers and everyone's pretending. And look, the actors like, how good is their acting? They're kind of pretending to do this thing and they've learnt their lines. Whatever. It's way less immersive than film is. It's kind of rubbish. I mean, it's terrible. It's like
Would you say,
rubbish form.
in terms of immersive, like, would you say, because would you feel the same in a cinema because you're surrounded by people, or do you mean like film at home? You feel like you can...
I mean, like, so like the edit in a film and the way you can achieve close up. It's like I'm in the world. I'm just being taken on this dream, you know.
Yeah.
But in theatre, it's so sort of artificial, and it's kind of rubbish because of that. But it's also maybe the potential to be the best art form because it's so honest
live
and like crap. You know, it's like.
So how do you feel about live recorded, not live, but recorded theatre? Have you watched like NT Live? Yeah, have you watched that?
I really struggle with it because, and I felt bad in the COVID. I had loads of friends going, oh yeah, like I haven't seen a play for years, and then I saw 112 Governors on NT Live, and it's so cool, and like I feel like maybe I'll go, you know, and I'm really aware of it being this like fantastic gateway drug, basically back into.
And it's accessible.
It's so accessible, and there's so many people who couldn't go to the theatre, and I think that's amazing. But personally, as someone who makes theatre, I find it really challenging because I just watch people act in a really weird way. Yeah. Because theatre acting is really weird.
Yes.
When
It's not
you put
naturalistic.
it's not naturalistic, nor
it's
it
not
should
filmic.
it be. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so then I'm watching these close-ups of these amazing actors say lines in a really weird way.
Yeah, because they're really saying it with the whole bodies in that moment.
Which is good theatre acting.
Which is great.
I also always wonder when I watch an NT Live with someone, let's say Benedict Cumberbatch, who does a lot of film as well. I always wonder if they slightly adjust their performances when they know they're being recorded because of that reason.
Yeah.
I'd be so interested to know. When this podcast blows up, we'll ask Benedict himself.
So we're sort of pretty much near the end now, unfortunately. This has been, I know, but
Yeah.
we've got one more question,
Okay.
which is always. I mean, Gabrielle, I don't want to
It's
speak
my
on.
favourite question.
I don't want to speak on
Okay,
behalf,
okay.
but you've said it, so
Yeah.
I'll let you do the final question.
So, what's the one question you wish people would ask you? Or is there one question you want to answer?
Gosh. What question would I like people to ask me? Would you like £1 million? That would be nice. No, I feel like, gosh, I think maybe like there is something about just doing things that aren't to do with theatre or storytelling, which would be nice for us who work in it to talk about more, which is like, what else is going on?
Yeah.
You know? So maybe it's something around that, which is like, do you want to do some frisbee with me? Like,
Yeah.
I do think there's something about that, which is like, we could hang out and not
Talk about
it.
theatre.
Yeah.
That
Okay,
would be
Tom.
nice. Yeah.
So tell me something really wonderful that's happening in your life that isn't to do with theatre. That you're happy to share.
Lots of friends have had babies, which is really nice. I love a baby. Fantastic stuff. Also, I discovered a sauna in Bristol that is quite cheap and fantastic, and I'm not going to say where it is.
Keep it.
But for me, in like trying to take control over my own mental health, like going to the sauna brings me a lot of peace and calm in a way that was quite difficult for me to grab otherwise. And it's a very like efficient way of doing that. So there's a little sauna and a plunge pool, and I'm sure you can find it. You can look it up,
But it's mine.
It's mine, and I don't want you to be there.
Especially if you work in theatre.
Yeah, exactly. It's my special place, and
Fine.
I have nice chats with the people I meet there, and it's really nice. And that's been very useful for me in a very busy time. Yeah.
Great.
Amazing. Well, I mean, Tom Brennan, thank you ever so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a really lovely podcast to be on. It was very well organised. This is a really nice setup, I have to say. Yeah. It's gorgeous.
I mean, it's been an
Thank
absolute
you.
gift of and generosity to have you on.
And I think the listeners are going to find lots of things that you've said super helpful.
Oh, God, I don't know.
But yeah, so there you have it. We've had Tom Brennan on. Tom Brennan, the director, playwright. I was going to say theatre maker, but maybe we should change that to actor /
We got to bring
Or
him
just
back.
like
We gotta bring
flyer
him-
maker, lighting guy, everything, anything.
But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's enough from us. But we will be back
you
next
next
week.
week.
Yeah. Until next time. See you later.
Bye.
Great show.
You've been listening to Absolute Scenes, written and hosted by Andy Barton and Gabrielle Shepherd.
Produced by Synchron Productions in association with the Bristol Vic Theatre.
Music by Brian Hargreaves.
Marketing and communications by Dylan Tozer, Amanda Adams, and Gabrielle Shepherd.
Please like and subscribe in all the usual ways, depending on the platform that you're devouring this on.
We've also set up a page on Buy Me a Coffee, where if you feel so inclined, you can become a supporter of the pod and help us and our guests. But honestly, we're really glad to be in your ears, so absolutely no pressure.
And tune in next time, where it will be much the same, but different, like each of my visits to my barbers.